You won't believe what she did after her own daughter called her too poor for Thanksgiving. You ever have one of those moments where someone says something so shocking, so unexpectedly cruel, that your whole view of the world just shifts? That happened to me. And what I did next? Well, let's just say no one, not my daughter, not the media, not even I, saw it coming. It all started with a blouse I hadn't worn in years. Silk, a little too fancy for my usual style. I stared at myself in the mirror, almost not recognizing the woman I saw. 63 years old, used to sensible cardigans and old sneakers, blending in more than standing out. But not today. Today I had a lunch date with my daughter. She'd chosen the kind of upscale restaurant where the silverware's heavier than the food. Said she wanted to talk about family matters. That phrase had been echoing in my head for 3 days. And not in a good way. By the time I pulled into a cheap parking spot 3 blocks from the restaurant, because valet was out of the question, I already knew this wasn't going to be just any lunch. Alexia was already seated when I walked in. She looked flawless. Highlighted hair glowing under the sunlight, crisp blouse, subtle makeup. The kind of elegance that whispers, "I'm better than you," without ever saying a word. "Mom, you made it," she said, standing to greet me with a hug that was more about preserving her foundation than showing affection. "You look nice." That pause said everything. She'd already taken stock. My shoes were comfortable but clearly not designer, the blouse came from a discount rack, and I wasn't wearing any of the jewelry I used to have, because I'd sold most of it just to get by. Still I smiled. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look beautiful as always." I took my seat, aware she'd chosen a table smack in the middle of the restaurant. Typical Alexia, always conscious of who's watching. Then came the first jab, dressed up as politeness. I went ahead and ordered us the tasting menu. "I know you've been economizing." There it was. The backhanded kindness that felt more like a slap. I nodded and thanked her, careful not to let the sting show. Years of practice. But I knew something was coming. The way her fingers tapped the tablecloth. That same impatient rhythm from when she was a kid and had to deliver bad news. She leaned in. "Zoe, I wanted to talk to you about Thanksgiving." And just like that, the entire course of my life shifted. I smiled politely. "Of course. I've been looking forward to it." She hesitated for a second, which meant the next thing out of her mouth was going to hurt. "Well," she said slowly, "Richard and I were thinking this year. Maybe we should keep it small." That word landed like a slap. Waited. The kids are getting older. Emma's 15 now, and Jordan's 13. They have a lot of friends they want to include. Richard's parents are flying in from Seattle. We're already at 9 people. Everyone except me. My hands tightened around my napkin under the table. "And you think one more would be too much?" I asked calmly. She smiled. That smooth corporate smile that looked so good in boardrooms and felt so cold in real life. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it is. It's not personal." Of course it was personal. Everything about it was personal. She went on, barely blinking. "Richard's parents are used to a certain environment. They like to talk about business, investments, travel. And lately, well, you seem a little disconnected from those kinds of conversations." Disconnected. That was her polite way of saying I didn't belong. That I couldn't keep up. I remembered last Christmas, sitting silently while Richard's mother talked about their $12,000 Mediterranean cruise, trying not to show how much it hurt just hearing the price. But I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask for pity. I listened. 'Cause that's what you do when you care. "I was listening," I said, my voice low. I was interested in her stories. Alexia nodded. "I know. But you weren't participating, Mom. And it's uncomfortable when someone can't relate. It throws off the energy." And there it was. The truth. I made them uncomfortable. I didn't fit. I didn't belong. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. "You might be more comfortable spending the holiday at home. Maybe order in. Watch some movies. I could drop off leftovers the next day." Leftovers. Like I was a stray dog she didn't want to eat at the table. I set my fork down. Looked her straight in the eye. Alexia, I said slowly, are you telling me I'm not welcome at Thanksgiving because I'm poor? Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't deny it. We just want what's best for everyone. And just like that, the dam inside me broke. But not in the way she expected. No tears. No begging. No quiet acceptance. Just clarity. You're absolutely right, I said, standing up. I don't belong at your table. She blinked, confused. Wait, what about the bill? Smiled. Don't worry. I'm sure you can handle it with all your social fluency. And I walked out. For the first time in years, I walked out with my head held high. And what I did next would change everything. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, that same wobbly chair I'd had for years. He cooling beside me. And in front of me, a business card I hadn't looked at in over a decade. Harrison and Associates. Wealth Management. The card felt heavy in my hand. Like a key I'd been carrying for years without realizing it still worked. Picked up the phone. No hesitation. Hello, a voice answered. This is Janet Harrison and Associates. This is Diane Carson. I'd like to speak with someone about liquidating some assets. The next day, I walked into that glass tower downtown like a ghost from a different life. The marble floors. The faint smell of leather and polished wood. I used to belong here. Back when David was alive, when we talked about retirement plans and college funds. But today, I wasn't here to talk about the future. I was here to change it. Charles Harrison looked older but still sharp. He offered a smile I couldn't tell was polite or genuine. Diane, he said, it's been a long time. What brings you back? I want to make a donation, I said simply. To a children's charity in Southeast Asia. $3.5 million. You could have heard a pin drop. That's a substantial amount, he said carefully. May I ask what prompted this? Told him. About the lunch. The rejection. My daughter's words. Social fluency, discomfort, poor. And for the first time, I admitted something out loud I hadn't even dared whisper to myself. I had failed my daughter. Not in the way you'd expect. Not by being too soft or too absent, but by thinking that teaching her to stand on her own meant leaving her blind to what really mattered. Humility, gratitude. Charles listened quietly, nodding, never interrupting. When I finished, he asked gently, are you sure you want this to be public? Absolutely. I want my name on it. I want people to know. And yes, that included Alexia. The woman who thought her mother was a burden would now have to explain to her circle of elite friends why that same mother just made headlines for the biggest single donation in the charity's history. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Bangladesh. And I wasn't going as a donor. I was going as a volunteer. The Dhaka airport was a whirlwind of sound and color. Kids running barefoot, vendors shouting in Bengali, the humid air clinging to me like a second skin. After 36 hours of travel, you'd expect me to be exhausted. But I wasn't. I felt more awake than I had in years. Donna from the Children's Future Initiative met me just outside customs. A sturdy woman in her late 50s. Sun-worn and smiling like someone who'd seen the worst of the world but hadn't let it harden her. You must be Diane, she said. We're so grateful you came. No airs. No status games. Just gratitude. She walked me through the next few months like it was a mission brief. 2 weeks at a medical clinic in Dhaka. A month in Myanmar helping set up a school. 6 weeks in Cambodia working on a nutrition program. A final week in the Philippines documenting the impact of the donation. You're our only major donor who actually asked to volunteer in the field, she said, half laughing. Most people just want their name on a plaque. I just smiled. I didn't need a plaque. I needed to matter. The clinic in Dhaka was tucked between metal shacks and muddy alleys. The kids wore tattered shirts and played soccer with balls made of bundled rags. But there was life here. Raw, unfiltered life that I hadn't felt in years. Dr. Hazel, the clinic's director, didn't waste time with pleasantries. She put me to work immediately, Intake interviews, basic care, comforting sick children. It was intense, messy, real. And it filled a hole in me I hadn't even known was there. You speak softly, she said after my second day. The children trust you. That night, I sat in my tiny hostel room and called Charles to check in. He told me the donation had already inspired over $200,000 in new contributions. News outlets were reaching out for interviews. The impact was rippling fast. And then he added casually, "Your daughter's been calling the office. Blah. She's asking for your contact info." I stared out the window at the street below. At a little girl laughing as she chased a chicken through the dirt. "No," I said. "Not yet." I wasn't ready to be pulled back into her orbit. Not when I just started to find my own. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Mornings at the clinic. Afternoons teaching English. Evenings writing in a notebook I'd bought at a local stall. I was tracking more than just numbers or tasks. I was tracking a transformation. Then came the message. My phone buzzed. A new number. "Hi, Grandma. This is Emma. Mom gave me your number. Hope you're okay. I miss you. Emma." My granddaughter. 15, curious, thoughtful. We'd barely spoken in recent years, but now. Here she was, reaching out not as someone told to, but because she wanted to. I stared at her message, heart full. That night, after I helped tuck in a feverish toddler and washed my hands in a rusted sink, I texted her back. "I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm in Bangladesh helping kids get medicine. How are you?" And just like that, something opened. Maybe I thought I hadn't lost everything after all. Emma and I kept messaging. Short, honest notes between generations trying to reach each other across years of silence. She told me her mom had been crying. That she didn't understand why I'd left or what exactly had happened between us. That her little brother, Jordan, thought I might be sick. I wanted to tell her the whole story. But how do you explain to a child that her mother had once been so ashamed of you? She'd rather feed you leftovers than offer you a seat at the table. So I kept it simple. Sometimes adults need time to think. But I miss you too. Then came the CNN crew. They showed up to the clinic like a tidal wave. Cameras, boom mics, lights. They wanted to film a follow-up segment. Apparently, the public loved the story of the mystery donor grandma. I sat in that hot little office, sweat clinging to my back, a stethoscope hanging around my neck, surrounded by crates of medical supplies my donation had helped purchase. The reporter leaned in. "What made you give $3.5 million to a children's charity in Southeast Asia?" she asked. "Why here?" I didn't hesitate. "Because these kids. They understand what a gift really is," I said. "They don't care what car you drive or what clothes you wear. They don't measure your worth by how much you make. They're just thankful that someone cared enough to help." She nodded slowly. "And how do you feel being here with them?" I looked outside at Rashida, a little girl we'd treated for malnutrition. She was chasing a butterfly through the yard. Smiling. Live. "I feel like I'm finally in a place where I belong," I said. "And for the first time in years. I don't care whether my daughter approves." It was harsh. But it was honest. 3 months passed in a blink. My hands grew calloused. My back ached from long days. My heart got bigger. When it was time to fly back to Portland, I didn't feel like I was going home. I felt like I was leaving one. The moment I landed, the messages started pouring in again. Missed calls. Voicemails. Even one from my son, Michael, who normally stayed out of family drama. Emma's texts had changed too. "Grandma, Mom's been looking at flights to Asia. Dad said no. She's kind of spiraling. Please just let us know you're okay." I wanted to call. I really did. But I also knew. This time Alexia needed to sit in the silence. To understand the weight of what she'd done. To feel the absence she had so casually tried to impose on me. And then, 47 minutes after I got back to my apartment, there she was. My door. No makeup. Ponytail. Not a speck of her usual polish. Just a tired, broken woman who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Mom," she said, voice cracking. "You're back." He nodded. "I am. I didn't move to let her in. We stood there, two women who'd spent years orbiting each other in the same family, but rarely in the same truth. "I've been trying to reach you," she said. "I watched the interviews. I read everything. The kids you helped. The schools. I'm proud of you. Are you?" I asked quietly. "Or are you proud that your mom turned out to be someone you can brag about?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I never thought you were an embarrassment. You told me I didn't belong at your Thanksgiving table," I said. "You said I made people uncomfortable just by being there." She broke. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. I've replayed that conversation 1,000 times. I've cried until I made myself sick. I became someone I don't recognize. Someone cruel. For the first time in years, I saw real vulnerability in her face. Not the polished mask. Not the professional facade. Just a daughter. Wrecked by her own mistakes. "I want to understand how I became that person," she said. "I want to fix this. I want my mom back." I looked at her, really looked at her. "Which version of your mother do you want? The poor one you pitied? Or the wealthy one who can fund your kids' future?" She was crying now. Uncontrolled. "I want the one I threw away," she said. "The one those kids in Asia got. The one I didn't realize I needed until I lost her." For a long moment I said nothing. Then I stepped aside and opened the door. "Come in," I said. "Let me tell you about Rashida." Alexia stepped inside like someone entering a sacred space. She looked around at my modest apartment, the same one she once saw as not enough, but now she looked at it differently. Not with judgment, but with something like respect. She sat on my old couch, carefully, quietly, waiting. I showed her the photos first. Rashida grinning outside her family's one-room home, the teenage boys from my English class in Myanmar proudly holding their acceptance letters to universities they never thought they'd reach, the children in Cambodia whose growth charts had finally turned upward after weeks of proper nutrition. Then I pulled out the letter. One sheet of notebook paper, signed by 43 students from a school we'd built together in a rural village. "Thank you for believing we are worth helping." Alexia read it 3 times. Then pressed it to her chest like it hurt to hold. "I threw this away," she whispered. "I told you you didn't belong. And you went and gave your love to people who actually needed it." He nodded. "Because they welcomed it." She looked up at me, eyes red. "Will you come to Thanksgiving this year? Not because of what you have. Not because of what you can give. But because we need you. I need you." I studied her for a long moment. She was still polished, still successful, but something had changed. She wasn't trying to control the moment anymore. She was asking to be let in. "I'll think about it," I said. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the first time in years I'd seen a real chance at something better. And that was enough for now. Because the truth is, we don't get to choose what other people value. But we do get to choose how we respond when they finally see us for who we truly are. So, if you've ever been made to feel small, unseen, undervalued, uninvited, don't forget this. Your worth isn't measured by someone else's table. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is build your own. And if this story hit home for you, if it reminded you that kindness and courage matter more than cars and titles, go ahead and give it a like. Subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart. Because your story matters, and someone out there needs to hear it.